Hello and welcome to If Supr Says It. This is episode 3, and today I am joined by Laxing from Oxygen Esports. How are you doing today, Laxing?
Doing good, Seth. I'm glad to be on here. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised because I was looking to see if you had been on like Intero's podcast or anything like that previously, and I hadn't seen anything like that involving you, which to me was a little surprising just because obviously for you, you've been, in the NA scene since literally year one.
Yeah, since the beginning. Yep.
So, I don't want to call Antero
Parker
out, but I think he hates you.
Parker said he'd get me on there eventually, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Parker talks out his ass a lot.
Yeah, I think he hates you.
He
You know what?
might.
Well,
He honestly might.
so I don't know if this is politically correct, but I was told that you can never trust a ginger. So if he
Dude,
told you
I'm
that,
slowly
yeah.
turning into a ginger. Like my beard used to be dark, and
Mhm.
now it's like slowly turning ginger. So I might be turning into one. You might not be able to trust me here pretty soon.
Yeah, Kyno leaving is starting to make a lot more sense with that news. It's shocking.
I think other things played into that for it to make sense.
Okay, so I think what we'll do is we'll start with the current iteration, I guess, of Oxygen, and then work backwards so we can go, talk about the team right now, and then work back towards the Kino Yog saga, and then a little bit before, and then just touch on a couple different things.
I think people in your chat are telling to turn me up.
Yeah, I turned you up slightly. So starting off with I guess your current roster, for those who don't know, Kyno and Yoggah left to join XSET, and you guys picked up Dream from Mirage and Newers, who I don't even think has played T2 up until this point.
Just T3.
So I'm curious, how so far do you think they've been fitting in? I know you guys haven't been a team for like a long time, but do you feel like they're fitting in well, or do you think there's going to be some growing pains coming into like stage one here?
Yeah, no, I think they're fitting in great, honestly. To me, and which is something that's important for me. It might not be important for some people on my team, but for me especially, maturity is a huge thing. I'd say just normally, like as you get older, you mature, or you should mature just naturally. And to have an environment where everyone, obviously there's still jokes, they're still fucking around, but like the whole atmosphere behind it is just based off maturity. And me personally, I think this is the most mature oxygen reciprocity that has been. So for me, it's a huge plus. And in terms of just dreams and newers, especially in terms of their personalities, I think they fit in perfectly with how we already operate with myself, Fox, and Vert. So that aspect, I think it's great. I think in the future, there will be growing pains. I think any team, no matter what team you're on, no matter who you bring on, no matter how old you are, there's always going to be growing pains. It's just a matter how you adapt to those growing pains and how you work with them or
Mm-hmm.
around them and try to, figure that out. But so far, just based off scrims, things have been looking really good. So I'm happy with where we're at right now. There's not really much or anything negative to say on their behalf or even the team's behalf.
So with Dream and Newers coming in on paper, it kind of seems like Dream just slots into replace Kyno on Smoke, and then Newers kind of replaces Kyno on I guess the entry role he had been playing later in the year for OXG. I guess my question would be, so on attack, I know Fox had, as Kyno said last week, Fox had kind of moved over to more of a hard breach role so that it was, I guess, easier, more comfortable for him to IGL. Now that you have Dream, who has primarily been a hard breach player in his career, is he back on? Is Dream going to hard breach and Fox going more to like, or more accustomed to seeing him on Sledge and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so that exactly what you said. Dream has definitely taken over the hard breach role, the bomb planting role. Fox will do like a second hard breach if necessary, like playing the Mav or playing Habana if need be. But for the most part, he is now playing the Sledge. And then Vert and Newers are now working together in terms of the entry. And then I'm still playing the flank watch flex role, depending, what's needed to be done in that area. So everything has pretty much stayed the same, aside just from Fox and Mitch swapping roles.
With OXG, I think your team is like pretty interesting because I mean, you and you are Laxing. You and Fox, I think, have been on the same team longer than, and I don't mean as a duo. I just mean like, even though you haven't always been Oxygen, you know your Reciprocity, Cloud9, you
Yeah.
guys have been within the same like team. I think for the longest in NA of anyone besides maybe Bosco and SSG, but your team always is consistently around the top four. Like, you know, we've had a version of your team with Slash and Bio. We've had the recent version with Kyno and Yoggah, who are both coming in with very little pro league experience. I mean, dating even further back, there was, you know, the Mark Retro,
Schlongy.
and Skies, and you guys were always around top four, and maybe here or there, like even last year, you guys kind of had one off stage, but at the end, you guys are always making invitational and stuff like that. And especially for you, because I think people are a little critical of your play style sometimes because you're not always like in the shits, I guess you'd
With the
say.
team, you could say, yeah.
Yeah, you're kind of, you know, whether you're flank watch or lurking, or, you know, you're always kind of, you know, I've even classified your play style before as super, like, it's pretty unique. Like, it's hard to play against sometimes because you literally don't know where you might be. You could be doing anything. But as we just said, it's led up to like long-term success, like over years and years.
Well, and
Why?
you even,
Yeah,
sorry to cut you off. I
you're
mean,
good.
you even, like I said back then, before we actually went live here, you know, when Troy said that about my play style, like you backed that up with that tweet about, you know, that one season that I had. I don't know the exact stats, but you said
Mhm.
from attack and defense, attack was like an 81% win rate from kills, defense was like a 70 something percent win rate from kills. And then out of all those kills, like out of 140 something kills, 36 came from losses. So that I'm already way past the halfway point in terms of like successful rounds. Just whether it's my play style, whether it's, you know, backing up off my team, whatever the case is, you know, like obviously my play style, like whether people want to critique it or, you know, give it shit, like there is clearly long-term success that has came from it. I don't think it's the best play style in the world, regardless it is my play style, but it
Mhm.
works for what my team needs. It works for me, and you know, like there hasn't been a lot of downside. Sure, there's been rounds maybe lost or choked or whatever, but like in terms of more success that's came from that, there's definitely a huge margin that outweighs the not success from it.
Yeah, and the stat you're referring to is, I think it was sometime last year on the 6on6 podcast, but you had contributed, I think Canadian was saying that you were like very baity and that you were basically just playing for kills and not necessarily trying to help the team win. But the stat was, out of every player in NA, you were, if not number one, you were like top three in terms of.
I think I was second. I think Achieved
Mm,
beat me by some, like by a small margin, but yeah,
yeah,
regardless, it was still top 5.
and it basically said that the rounds that you get kills, like you said, 80% of the time were translating to wins, where the rounds where you didn't get a kill or you got a kill and lost were much less. Like 20% you would get a kill and lose the round. So you were, in a way, the like X factor for your team winning or losing rounds, which kind of obviously goes against the idea that your play style is baity. Because I mean, and if we're looking at how the game is played now, a lot of the players I would consider, or who fans would consider the best players in the game, are playing like a lurky role. Like on my team, for instance, Grixer. I think right now people probably think Grixer is one of, you know, the 5 best players in the game. He plays a very like lurky role. Like, yeah, he will get entry kills and things like that, but if you know the game, you know he's not the entry player on the Sonics. He's kind of just, he just looks for opportunities. So I do think, in a way, the game has actually moved towards where your lurky role is actually more important now, because every team, to be good, seems like they need, you know, a pretty strong roamer, like kind of lurky player.
I mean, and to touch up on that, which a lot of people do focus on stats or entries and this, that, and the scene. What like the scene as a whole, the community, not necessarily the pro scene, but the community does not understand roles because I play a flank watch role,
Mhm.
regardless whether I'm lurking or not. So when I'm on flank watch, I'm on the opposite side of the map where my team is pushing forward, they're clearing stuff. Like I'm eliminating factors of being shot in the back, someone coming up behind them, so my team can focus on what's in front of them. So when my team dies on the initial push, whether one person dies, whether two people dies, and we don't get any control, we don't get any picks, like that leaves me in a spot. One, I'm not able to refrag or right away. Like that just naturally isn't going to happen because I'm on the opposite side of the map. Two, I'm not going to be able to really gain control if my team hasn't gained control because I'm not necessarily on an operator that is built for entering. Like if I'm Nomad, I'm not going to challenge a Jaeger behind a shield that has ADS burns because that's just a lost situation there. So in a lot of situations, people take baiting as like just because the guy's across the map, but like how I play and how I do things is just what my team asks me to do. If my team is asking, so like whatever you see me doing a lot of the times, if I'm on flank, it's like the team is specifically or whatever the strat is, like that is specifically what I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, it's unfortunate if we die. Like I said, we're trying to clear stuff, we're trying to do things and we die, whatever. And I pick up, 2 kills and then I die. Like that's not baiting. That's just me playing my role and then having to then try to do someone else's role on an operator that probably isn't the best suited to do that role. And if I get kills from it, great. If I don't, that's kind of like the downside of a flank watch role is, if your team can't take control, you're in a shittier spot than what your original teammates were trying to do it before you. So a lot of people just got to understand the roles in this game and how they operate. But back to what you were saying with the lurker roles, I think it is important to have lurkers on teams because if you can catch teams off guard, if you can get a man advantage, like that ultimately will help you gain more ground into the map, may make you more control of areas. And you said that my play style is sometimes hard to deal with because you don't know where I'm going to be showing up from or hitting from, like whatever it is. And I try to do that consistently because Siege is at a game, at a point in 7 years that a lot of the shit is pretty stagnant. It's a lot of the same takes, a lot of the same plays, it's a lot of the same pushes. So, if you can catch someone off guard by going one window, one round, killing them, and then putting the pressure on the team, the enemy team, and, having them think, oh, Laxing did this, let's focus here. And then I go somewhere else. And, if it works out, I get another kill. That constantly plays a fundamental game against the other team of having to guess, am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? Which, in those seconds, if someone is watching something for an extra 3 seconds, that could ultimately lead into them being flanked. That could lead into then my team pushing from a different angle and killing them because they're so focused on where someone else is going to hit from. So it's just a fundamental thing.
Yeah, and in terms of even the like lurker kind of role, every team and every player can play that role differently. Like, even though I would say, for instance, you, Citizen, Grixer are all lurkers, none of you really play that role the same, but you can play it to a way where it's still impactful for your team. And like you said, for your team, you may be a flank watch, but you also kind of have the ability to move around a little bit. So in a way, you would be similar to how Yeti plays for the Sonics, where he's our flank watch player. But, if shit hits the fan or something needs to be done, Yeti's going to look for an opportunity to do something. So I do think, especially in Siege, because it's not as transparent as CSGO, where it's like, there's an IGL, there's an opper, there's an entry player. It's just pretty straightforward. I think roles in Siege get confused a lot of time because not only can you have a role on attack, you could have a role on defense. Your hard breach player on attack could sometimes be a roamer on defense. Your smoke player on defense could sometimes be, Ash, kind of like Kyno on attack. So for a lot of people, a lot of players, there's not a clear-cut role because you could be a support on one side and a completely different role on the other. I made a YouTube video to try to explain it. And even in that video, I feel like it's still pretty confusing because, if somebody like Canadian, for instance, Canadian's playing like flex on attack, he's playing roam on defense, but he's also IGLing. he's kind of doing like a bunch of different roles that don't necessarily fit into what you imagine the IGL playing as, but it just, I mean, they seem to think it works for them, and every team obviously has their different ideas, and so we kind of got off track because we got in the discussion of like stats and the idea of roles. But I guess my original question was, this core of you and Fox, and Vert has been involved in this core now for a while, seemingly can just plug and play people into the roster and you will be contending for top four. And for those who don't know, top four, the reason that's like a big deal is because the way the majors work in Siege, if you place top four, that qualifies you for the majors, and that's the ultimate goal, is to qualify for the majors. That's where you can win titles. That's where you can win more money, etc.
I mean, that's where majority of the money comes from. Like
right.
Pro players outside of salaries, you want to make events because that's where you're going to be making more money.
So yeah, I get paid a pretty decent salary, and we had a good. Obviously, we won the NAL championship, and then had a pretty good placing at Invite. And it's not the same, but it's not far off. The two prize pools matching my salary. Like you can win a lot of money from like the salaries or from the events.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt getting grand, 10 grand, just at any of these events. I don't know. Anyone's
you're kind of you're lagging like just a little bit. So give me I'll give 1 second for it to
suck.
Okay. We'll give 1 second so Lax can unlag hopefully, and then we'll continue. But yeah, while we're seeing if his internet
I think we're back.
Okay, good. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So if you're listening to this on like a podcast and not in video form, he was not like abducted right there. This was just internet hiccups. So why do you think that your kind of core team has been able to remain consistently top four for, I don't know, like 3 years now? Do you feel like it's because I do feel like NA now, I mean, even we saw with Sonic's last season, NA is getting more competitive where all of a sudden, instead of there being 4 good teams, there's 5 good teams. Instead of there being 5 good teams, there's 6 good teams. Do you think that you guys have been able to keep up that level of success because NA is or has been just very top-sided? Or do you feel like you guys are just, I mean, in a way that good where you can kind of, with Slash and Bio, you brought in 2 experienced players who, I mean, if we're being honest, people saw them as like busts for your roster. I think there are reasons for that. I still think Slash is a good player. And then for this last year, you guys had Kyno and Yoggah, who had never played above CL, but the results really are still the same. What do you think the reasoning for that is, for the consistent success of you guys?
I mean, I'm not going to downplay our skill and our talent. That definitely plays a huge factor. Our work ethic, we practice 6 days out of the week. Our coaching staff, Hopes and Redeem, do a really good job in, getting us prepared for our matches. But just in scrims and everything, and I'm sure you've experienced it as well. Some teams, or whether they're T2, whatever, like some teams really play for scrims. They go super hard, even though you're trying to go over strats and do this, do that. So I think it's important with what we do that, we really try to, still focus on our fundamentals, regardless if it's scrim, regardless if we're up. We're still trying to, close out rounds properly and trying to hone in on that. And that, that goes back into what I was saying, not just only the talent side of things, but, the work that we put into it. We try to be as consistent as possible. And clearly that has shown throughout, multiple seasons of top 4. And as you were saying, placing top 4 is important because that's what gets you to the majors. If, that's how it was back in the early years, because before, remember, it was top 2. So like top 4 really didn't matter. But if you just even look at my track record through Liquipedia, it's the majority is top 4 placings. So like I said, it's definitely talent and it's definitely work ethic with just me, Vert, and Fox, and then whoever we bring on. Like, it's definitely very important that, we're all on the same page and that we all are trying to reach the same goal no matter who's on our team.
Do you think it's kind of the system of the team that you can kind of plug and play people and the results kind of don't really differ that much, or do you think it's, also at the same time you guys just happen to make good pickups and you get people who seemingly fit well within the team?
I think it's definitely a mixture of both. I think with how our team operates, we give a lot of freedom to like newer players and like what they want to play. We aren't just necessarily plugging people in. We let people have a say. If something's not working, like let us know. Talk to us. We aren't going to not work with you just because you're a brand new player. We don't want someone that's a soldier that we can just be like, do this. That's it. They can't think for themselves. Like we really try to stress. With whatever players that we get, we want you to be your own player. So, if that ends up you still playing the roles that we asked you to play in the beginning, like great. But I think a big important thing is that we just give a lot of our newer players the freedom to play what they want to play and like try to work with it and try to put it into our strats. And like I said, if that ultimately ends out being kind of the same thing that the other player previously was doing and they're just doing it better, then great. So that definitely plays a factor. And then I think again, still just with the core three with me, Fox, and Vert, I think that also plays a very big factor as, three very consistent players that no matter who we play, whether two of us are going off or all three of us are going off or one person's going off, like it's still enough to keep pushing us, further into those games, further into those matches, closing out those matches.
So with this new roster of Dream and Newers, is your expectation to still be contending to be top four? Like if you guys say finish seventh, is that like a huge disappointment to you? You still believe you should be contending for top four?
100%. I mean, I've been competing now for 7 years. I haven't missed a day. And the last thing I want to do with all the time that I already put into this game is then to put all this time in and then play seventh.
Right,
Fuck
yeah.
that. I don't want to be doing that shit. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely, important for Newers and Mitch or Ethan and Mitch to, understand, we are a top four team. We've stayed top four, and that is still the goal to get first place no matter what. Whatever the roster is, whatever the roles are, like the goal in mind is that we're getting first, we're making events, and we're placing well. That is end period goal for Oxygen, no matter what the roster is.
Yeah, you never want to, because this impacted my decision in like not retiring, but you never want to be an older or like a veteran player on a team that's going backwards or like not contending, because then you're kind of like always in these rebuilding stages. And it's kind of silly to say because at the end of the day we do play video games, but like practice, for us, for instance, we have 2 scrims a day, 6 days a week. That's a lot of time. And then some people also do more in terms of like VOD and stuff outside of the game. You're putting in a lot of time outside of the game, a very repetitive thing, so it can be pretty draining. And if you're not contending and you're doing that to like squeak by relegation or get like 7th place, like it can be really hard on you, especially if you've been playing for a long time.
And that's the thing. There are some players, like I'm not gonna speak on people specific, but there are definitely some people in the scene that are content with, as long as they're still in the pro scene, as long as they're safe, as long as they're still making their salary, like they're okay with that. And to me, as a competitor, and as long as I've been a competitor, fuck that. I want to be top team. I want to be known. I want to be a top player. So, however long I keep this going is how long it's going to stay going. I'm going to try to be as consistent as I can be every single day. I know there's, a stigma sometimes out there that I don't play the game nearly as much as a lot of other pros. But I mean, regardless of that, no matter what I'm doing outside of the game or even inside of the game, whether I'm playing casual, I still try to focus on doing the same thing that I'll do in a match. Like I'm not just running in blind. Sure, there's moments, but like I'm still working on my craft, so I still translate that into my actual play and professional play.
Yeah, and you can also like, I think there is and this depends for each player too.
It's definitely person to person for sure.
But like you can put time into the game and trying to improve as a player or improve your team without playing the game. Like
100%.
If I'm being real, I don't probably play the game that much outside of scrims. Like I'll play FPL, and even that is like, I mean, that's just like torture. That would be like if I die and go to hell, I just have to play FPL against Matt Bonger all day.
Listen,
but
if I play FPL, hell is frozen over. That's all I'm saying. You see me in the queue.
But the amount of time I put in like outside of the game probably ends up being more than every other player. So, they're just because you don't necessarily see somebody grinding, playing ranked all the time, which honestly can be very difficult if, there's cheaters everywhere. It's, you can't really judge. I would say the only way you can really ever judge somebody is just based off their performance or their team's performance. And, if whatever works for them, works for them. I know, like Vert, for instance, I think he doesn't even play Rainbow. He just plays other games, but it keeps him like sharp on Rainbow. And
I mean that's what you were saying too. There's other games that you can still translate still into your professional play. Whether you're playing Valorant or whether you're playing CS:GO, like those games still make you work on fundamentals that you would still be playing in Siege. And as long as you're playing, I think, to that level in those games, not necessarily you're playing at a pro level in those games, but if you are still focusing on those mechanics or focusing on, how could you play that better or how could you do this differently to, turn situations in your favor, that will apply into any other FPS you're playing. So I think it's important to, still obviously Siege is the main game, but
mhm.
if you can still work on those skills outside, just as you were saying, whether you're VOD reviewing, whether you're doing this, whether you're doing that on other games, like that still is work. That's still something that you're doing that still is making you a consistent or good player.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation. And I do think, in a way, finally, Rainbow is trending in the right direction, adding deathmatch and stuff. So there is ways you can kind of practice your individual skill outside of just playing attack and defend basically all day.
Yeah.
I think there are obviously issues with deathmatch right now, but they're at least trying.
They're going in the right direction for sure.
So I guess now we can move on over to the topic of Kyno and Yoggah and the 2021 version of OXG. And I guess the first question I would have for you is, have you listened to Kyno's podcast that I did with him last week?
I listened to it. Yeah, I did listen to it. Was I like super zoned in throughout the majority of it? No, I definitely made sure to listen to the OXG part just to see like what was said, because I had people randomly messaging me saying Kyno was talking shit.
Mm-hmm.
When I watched it, and I was like, Kyno didn't really say anything that would be considered talking shit. And I think you said it best. Those may be some things that came off a little passive aggressive, but Kyno also isn't someone that's going to come on a show, cast, whatever, and just talk shit. Like that's just not Kyno in general.
Yeah, I mean, I do applaud Kyno for pretty much saying his truth without getting too personal. Yeah, but I definitely feel like knowing Kyno as well as not being a very just straightforward aggressive person, that I do feel like he was kind of saying as much as he felt like he could without potentially offending anyone who's on the team who he considers friends still, and might have had issue with. And so I guess going from that, what was your initial reaction to Yoggah and Kyno leaving at Invitational? Because from what he said, Ox seemingly knew that Kyno was leaving, but the rest of you guys were not necessarily aware. Was that was it a shock? Were you confused? Like, how did that occur?
Am I lagging right now? I see my bar going up and down. Sure.
You're slightly lagging. It seems like it's getting a little bit better though.
I hate Cox, man. To touch upon your question, I mean, obviously, I had no idea. We found out after the fact, and then found out actually how long it had been a thing, and that he's thought about. So to me, of course, it's shocking. I thought, finally we had a roster, a solid five, that we could work with, that we could be a top team when we were placing. The only split that we didn't place top four was the second split, and then immediately after we could have won first. I unfortunately choked against the SSG game, which ultimately would have got us first place for that season again. But regardless of that, I mean, yeah, I was shocked. 100% I was shocked. That's not something that I thought was going to happen. But at the same time, I'm not like surprised by it. Like, this is esports. There's shit that happens all the time. Like, throughout my 7 years, like, this isn't, something that's like unfamiliar or never seen before. So to me, it was like, okay, I guess, you got to do what you got to do and what you feel is right. And you touched up on it too. Maybe some teams and some players, wouldn't necessarily like that. They would have been an asshole about it. They would have been a shithead about it. But I think those two got really lucky that they're teamed with us three because we're very relaxed and calm and didn't like harp on them, didn't do anything. I just gave them advice in terms of, this is the esports world. You know how it is, Seth. I know how it is. And, you know, everything is a risk, no matter what you do. Whether you take a good deal, it turns out to be shit. You take a great deal, it turns out to be great. But that's something that everyone has to do at their own time whenever that comes. So all in all, I was shocked but not surprised.
How did you feel about, and this is maybe something you didn't know, but Kyno kind of said last week that part of the reason that Kyno wanted to leave was because he felt like your team was not capable of winning anything, and that at the same time he was kind of also saying that he thought the reason the team couldn't win was because he felt like on attack, or especially in like bigger moments or bigger games, that the team was very like stagnant and just not adaptable. Do you think he's like kind of talking out of his ass? Like how do you feel about him saying that?
I think it's a young and dumb sort of thing, like the saying young and dumb. It's not that Kino's actually dumb, it's just lack of experience.
You're lagging a little bit, so you might want to stop for 1 second and let it.
That is so bad. Let me know if it starts to get a little better.
Okay.
I can see the bar going up and down. Like this shit's so annoying that does this.
Yeah, we have Cox internet too, and it is not always the greatest.
Well, they literally did something to fix the internet out here, and it's only made it worse. So like they must have like fucking kicked it, and then
it seems like it's okay now.
Okay. What did you hear the last bit before I started like to actually lag?
You should just start over. It was
okay.
Terminator.
So I think it's a young and dumb situation, and not that Kino's dumb. I think it's just a lack of experience. I think it's just something that he saw an opportunity to play with friends, and I can't fault someone for wanting to take matters into their own hands, their own career, and try to do something different. But at that same time, again, with lack of experience, I don't really think he thought on it too hard. And the situation, because like you were saying, he didn't think that we were a team that was going to win anything, but he did feel that we were a top team, that we were always going to place top four, which ultimately will still lead us to events. Every invite, the last invite we placed with them, we place fifth. This invite, we placed eighth. So like we're still up there. Just because you aren't winning every single event isn't a bad thing, especially if you're placing high still. You're placing in the top 8, you're placing in the top 4. So again, to me, I think it's just a matter of lack of experience and not really thinking on it as a long term. Because I heard him in the thing saying, maybe X set will be a top team in a year or two, but a year or two really is a long time. Mm-hmm. And if you aren't finding that success in those 1 to 2 years, like, are you really going to be confident in that roster than you were even saying in a short term of being with Oxygen, having that success, whether that is short term or long term? Because so far the consistency of it being short term was looking successful. So, I mean, I have no ill will towards him or Yogg. If they find success on X set, great. If they don't, like you dug your own hole at that point. But that's a risk that he took. That's a risk they both took.
Yeah, and I think I kind of insinuated this speaking with him on the podcast last week, but it is somewhat seemingly like a naive way to think about it that, okay, I joined OXG, I got top 8 at 2 invites, I had very good placings throughout the year, I can join XSET and we will do this again. Maybe it won't be immediately, but in a year we could be doing this. But then if you think about it, you're leaving a team already doing that to join another team to try to do what the team you were just on was already doing. So like, I understand if he long-term thinks that team can be better than you guys, or better than everybody, a team that can win an event. But you are gambling not only time, but you're gambling just a lot on a roster of people who have never played together working out when I mean you already know the formula of the team you're on right now does work and has been working for years.
Yeah.
So to me it definitely is like I honestly feel like if he was in Pro League on a different team and they weren't you guys, so he didn't join a team that had initial success, does he think about it the same way, or does he just like then he's on a team that's trying to get top 4, so he feels like he wants to grind to get top 4? You know, in a way, it seemed like Kyno was. Your team was so good with him initially that it's almost like
Why would you not want to stay on it and work through the problems that were, said?
Yeah, and he already knows what he's getting with your team. So in my question, like in my mind, is he thinking that you guys have been that consistent top 4 team for several years, as we talked about, but you guys haven't won anything, but at the same time, you're still getting there, and he's newer, so he might not realize being top 4. I mean, as we were just saying, until very recently, it was extremely top heavy in NA, and now it seems more balanced. But it is not an easy thing to break into top 4. Like, the people who are top 4 are people who have been playing on the same teams for a long time, and they're people who generally are just better. There's a reason they get top 4 all the time. They're a better team, they're better players. And that's not saying that new people can't come along and, enter top 4. Like the Sonics did that.
I mean, yeah, you guys. I mean, everyone obviously slept on you guys. I mean, I slept on you guys obviously in the beginning, and then throughout each stage, throughout each season, like you guys are obviously now where you're at now. And I think every player on the team has made incredible strides in terms of, making a name for themselves, making the team, more known, a top team than obviously what it was in the beginning. So I think in terms of all new teams that have like entered the scene or been new team, like your team by far has had the most success and put in the most work to get to where you guys are now. And I don't think a lot of the lower teams do that.
I feel like and this is like, it's going to seem like I'm taking shots, but I'm not. I don't feel like they really know how to operate a team in terms of like I've been playing a long time. I think I'm the oldest pro player right now.
How old are you?
19.
I know you just turned 19.
Yeah. In dog years, though.
That was a dumb call. Okay,
yeah.
Dog years. Yeah,
but like, sure. I would say, at least with my experience, and then obviously we had Joe here, who's also a very professional person. There's an environment where what we're doing is there's a goal, it makes sense, and it's to improve everyone. I feel like on a lot of teams, and I feel like on a lot of teams, there's not. Like, they're doing things, but they don't know towards what end, if that makes sense. Like, and this is a thing too.
I think it's just a goal to stay in Pro League, not even necessarily. Like, I think in hindsight, like, obviously they want to be better, but I think the ultimate goal is to just be in Pro League. Like, it's not even necessarily like a placing thing.
I've never understood the idea of not playing to win. Like, even if you were on, like, for instance, I was on some shit teams like E-Gang the initial season that we got into Pro League on Sonics. We got out of Challenger League because we had former pro players who had an idea about how to play the game better than Challenger League players. But on a talent level, we were completely overmatched. But you're still trying to do everything you can to win, right? And some teams may go about it the right or wrong way, and you kind of, in a way, you just identify who's talented enough, who's not, and you have to kind of, especially as a team from like Challenger League or something, you kind of have to make cuts as you go to build up your talent.
Yeah.
But I do think like one of the issues a lot of the teams have is I feel like there's like a revolving door where they keep making changes, but they're not picking up the right people or it's not the right environment for these people. because they'll pick up a player, replace that same player, pick up another player. So they're keeping like certain people and then just keep bringing in new people for these other roles where it's like, I'm not sure if like maybe it's like talent evaluation because like for OXG, like when you picked up, like I think everybody knew Yoggah was like kind of an up and comer for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, just to even like talk about like our OXG pickup specifically, and just even my view on, I don't want to speak for Fox or Vert, but I don't necessarily want to pick up friends. I don't want to pick up people that I'm close to or that I have a good relationship with. I fortunately did like have a minor relationship with Yogg in terms of him being in Discord with me and other people. Like we fucked around, hung out a bit, but like we weren't best friends like that. And I didn't. Kyno was. I thought it was Kyno. And then transition to that. Whereas I thought
you're kind of breaking up right now. One sec. Yeah,
I hate fucking Cox, man. Jesus Christ.
Okay,
is it good now?
Yeah, it's okay now. Anytime you start talking, it just goes crazy.
So, yeah, you heard me when I say when we picked up Kyno and Yoggah, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then going into Newers and Mitch, like I thought Ethan was fucking cheating when I scrimmed him, and I told him that, like I dead ass thought he was cheating. I never went into a scrim and felt like someone was cheating until I met Ethan, and then come to find out, I was like, we got to pick this fucking kid up, and sure enough, he's not cheating. And then Mitch, like I just know Mitch through Pro League. We weren't best friends, we had conversations throughout Pro League and all that, but like we were never close. So for me, it's like I think it's important to like your teammates, but I think it's also important that when you're picking up people, you're picking up people that they all have the same goal in mind, and that is to improve, that is to make the team better, that is to make events, place well, do whatever the case is. And I think a lot of teams just kind of go for the friends. And throughout my career, teaming with friends has been one of the worst decisions I've done, and I found less success teaming with friends than making new teammates friends.
Well, I think obviously if you're friends with somebody, that gives you more opportunities because you might be their initial react. Like if you need a player, you might think of your friend first and be like, we should try this guy out. He's pretty good. But you think of that because of your friend. But if you look at it objectively, there's a lot of people who play the game. Usually your friend is probably not the best option. Sometimes he might be, but a lot of the time,
I think it's a rare case.
Yeah, a lot of the time that person is getting more benefit of the doubt because you already know them and picking up an unknown person to you. And that kind of goes to the ideology that a lot of people say is like, don't make your friends your teammates, make your teammates your friends. And at the end of the day, if we're being honest, your teammates don't even have to be your friends. Your teammates can be, you just have to be respectful towards each other. And, it's a job, right? You show up, you do work, you can work together, you can get along enough to where it's not like a bad environment or something. Mm-hmm. But, you don't have to be going on movie dates with all your friends, like all your teammates.
I just see Fox in the chat. I mean, even for me and Fox and how we became teammates, just since we're on this topic of like friends and whatnot, like I wasn't on the best terms with Fox when I first, met him or even teamed with him. But throughout the years of playing together, like, we became really close. He's definitely by far the closest person to someone that I view as like a brother to me in the scene. But even on that same note and him having that same towards me, like we both understand our goals and competing, and that we both hold each other accountable to play at the highest level, and that we both will get on each other if we're slacking. Like sure, the friendship is there, sure, the brotherhood is there, but in terms of a business side, me and Fox both understand from a business point that we're teaming with each other and we're playing with each other because we both have the same mindset, and that we're both going to be as consistent as possible. And I think that's important to have with each of your teammates, is that you guys, like you were saying, you don't have to be best friends. You don't even have to be friends. But as long as you guys both understand from a business perspective that you guys are here on this team competing in order to place as high as possible, win events, whatever, like that should be the main goal of every team, regardless of friendships, regardless of anything.
And so with that being said, how did you feel about Kyno when he was speaking about kind of you and Vert, that he didn't feel as close to you, or he didn't feel the chemistry with you and Vert because you guys don't live with, you don't live at the team house? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So when I heard him say that, I think Kyno made some points that, I can agree with. I don't want to completely write off everything he said. Like, I think he made some valid points in some areas. So, like, a situation like that, I think those are one of those situations where it's person by person. If he felt that, me and Vert there would have, helped the chemistry more with him, it would have been a better environment for him. Sure. Like, I can't say like, fuck you, Kyno, like fuck your feelings or fuck how you feel about that. Like, sure. I can agree with that. I can understand that. For me, and I'm sure you've probably seen it or heard it, whether it's on other teams, whatever, is like for me, I like someone that likes personal space. I think team houses are great. I'd prefer team apartments. I like having my own mess. And it's kind of one of those things that it's just, it's nice to have your own area and to compete, do whatever, and not have to worry about picking up someone else's shit or seeing someone else's shit, like whatever the case is. So for me, like it's important for me and like my mental health, and especially with doing this now for 7 years, like, I needed a break from that. I never planned on doing a team house long term. Like that was never something in goal of mine. That might be for some people, but also going into that, a lot of these team houses and a lot of these players, they're fucking 18, they're 19-year-olds, never lived by themselves, never had to fucking cook, clean, make their bed, wipe their own ass. So you see a lot of gross shit. I mean, one time in my career, I saw a fucking yogurt trail. Like someone came into our house, just threw fucking yogurt everywhere. And there's a yogurt trail and a fucking spoon next to this yogurt trail, which makes me think in my head, how the fuck are you eating your yogurt, spilling it, don't have your spoon, and you still have your yogurt in your hand, and you're just not even questioning, like, where the fuck's my spoon?
Did you
Like, are you
follow
then
the trail to see where it
well,
led?
it cut off. They clearly like, covered up the evidence and where it could have went in multiple areas. But like it was, I've just seen some shit. And it's just like for me, I like having my own mess. I like cleaning up after myself. I don't like cleaning up after 4 other people. Not even to say like, my team is necessarily dirty in any way, shape, or form. But I've just seen some shit and heard some shit. And I just like my own space. So in terms to go back to what Kyno was saying, I get that and I understand it. But I made sure to like talk to Mitch before even, fuck Ethan. But I asked Mitch, I was like, Mitch, does it bother you that I'm not at the house? And Mitch said, no, as long as, we're all competing, as long as we're all playing, it works out. And to me, it's like, before even team houses were a thing, and with competing early on, there were no team houses. You were playing with everyone through the internet. You were playing with your teammates through the internet. So I'm sure in some areas, yeah, it's sure there is that chemistry there. But for the most part, I don't think it really makes a big difference as long as everyone has the same goal in mind, works together, plays together, does whatever. So that's kind of my view on that. So I don't want to write how Kyno felt off about that. Like I can definitely understand that.
It's definitely a situation where I think everybody's gonna have different opinions on it, if it's important or not for people to live together or see each other like every single day. Just kind of based off the whole ideology I feel that Kyno has in terms of where, I mean, he even admitted Xset to him as kind of a friendship team. They just have like a pretty talented roster, but they're all friends. I think he personally just looks for more, like he wants
socialization.
Yeah, he just wants to be friends with everybody. He wants to have like the bonding aspect of it, which is fine.
And I
yeah,
can't
it's an opinion.
I can't
right?
fault him for that. I can't say that he's wrong to feel that way. It's his feelings. By all means, I totally get where where he made that point. That that sure that could be definitely a factor of something.
One area where you might say he was wrong is, because I was kind of even questioning this myself, is this is where I felt like he was being very passive aggressive in that he was kind of criticizing the playstyle of OXG and more specifically even kind of like, I felt like he was trying to criticize Fox without necessarily, because he's friends with Fox obviously, but he was trying to criticize Fox really without saying it was Fox's fault.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't listened to last week's podcast with Kyno, I encourage you to do so you have a better idea what we're talking about. But he basically said that he did not feel like the team could win because of how they attack, and that they were not adaptable, and that it was just something that he didn't see could be fixed because everybody is kind of set in the way they play.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because at least, and I brought out the stat, at least in NA, OXG, along with the Sonics and SSG, are the three best attacking teams in the region. Now, obviously, that statistic is not carrying over to international events. I don't know the exact statistics for international events, but within their own region, seemingly the OXG playstyle is very effective in terms of having success. What did you feel, or how do you feel about, I guess, his thoughts on if you guys are too stagnant, if you're too, I guess, predictable, or do you kind of think he just doesn't know what he's talking about? Because, like we said, the stats say that it does work. The results say that for a while it's been working. Is that just like, in a way, an excuse to validate leaving?
Yeah. Before I even get into that, just know everyone, I love Ethan when I said fuck Ethan. But to touch up with what you were saying, I think it was definitely more of just something to say that would kind of like, push the agenda further on why he left. Me personally, I think Fox, beginning of IGL and like what he's turned into now has definitely improved by a big margin. I think every team has like some sort of issue at some point in a round or in a game, whatever the case is. Do we adapt 24/7? No, but do our strats work a lot of the times? Yes, because just as you said, with the percentage and the stats behind it, clearly there is more progress being made than there is, digressing and, falling behind and, just being shit. So I don't feel that Kino really put a lot of thought into a lot of the things that he was saying that, might have, like I said, pushed the agenda further on why he left. But even aside from that, I think one of Kino and Yogg's biggest flaws as teammates, and like I said, I got all the respect for these guys. I think these guys are great. I think just one of the biggest flaws for them is, if you had these issues or you felt like, something that could have been done, that should have been said. Because as I said prior to all this, our team, we give everyone an opinion. We let everyone have a say, regardless of us being veterans, regardless of our skill, whatever talent. Like we literally will give anyone the say and give them the benefit of the doubt and how they feel. We aren't going to just force someone to do something if they don't want to do it. So I think Kino and Yogg had many opportunities where they could have said something to Hopes. They could have said something to Redeemer. They could have said something to myself. They could have said something to Fox. They could have said something to Vert. But no issues were ever brought to attention until we found out that they were leaving. Then he came on the cast and said, there was these situations or those situations. And it's like, those things were never said or brought up in any conversation. So it's like, I just feel that, again, with him leaving, it was just more, obviously wanted to join the team. And sorry, this is Kylo. And he, just was trying to say things that kind of obviously weren't super aggressive and super mean, but he was just saying something that kind of, just made it, understandable for people to be like, oh, okay, that's why he left. That's why they wanted to leave. But I don't think it's, a really legitimate reason, because every team has their issues, has their problems. And I think it's just a matter, again, about how you go about it to really address those and fix them, that we never had the opportunity.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned in terms of kind of not bringing up this issue before they basically decided to leave is something of a younger person, or a person who doesn't have as much life experience, because they're obviously, I'm pretty sure both of them came from Challenger League, and I think that was the first time both of them did not like live at home and really have to deal with probably people in person that weren't their family. And I think I do think with people like that, with younger people, with less experienced people, especially when you're on a team with like guys who've been there for years, there's like almost, you're scared to be confrontational, or you're scared to bring something up that could be confrontational, because you don't want to make your teammates mad. You don't want to do that, and that's not how it goes. And I don't want to necessarily feel like I'm like ragging on Kino, but I do feel like just the general, his entire outlook on a team also fits into that. He doesn't want to bring something up because he doesn't want anybody to get mad at him, because he doesn't want people to not be his friend. He doesn't want to not have that aspect. So he's somebody who really does not want to kind of make people mad. He just
Yeah,
wants to
no,
get along.
Kyno, just teaming with him. Like Kino's, he's kind of like a little brother in a way. Sorry if I'm getting away from the mic. He's like a little brother in a way, and he's definitely someone that doesn't, want to step on anyone's toes or be an asshole or do this. And that's where I say, I think that comes down to like one of the biggest flaws about him is just not knowing how to communicate properly. Obviously, also English isn't his first language, so there's sometimes obviously when we scrimmed with him he would say something that really wouldn't make sense. It wasn't all the time, but like he doesn't know how to articulate some of the things that he says. And I think with that being said, obviously that comes down to experience. And especially throughout this professional career, you definitely learn how to conduct yourself better, how to phrase things better, how to, just, be more professional about things than, feeling like you're hurting someone's feeling or feeling like you're stepping on toes. So definitely, I don't think Kino said anything, even in that cast with you, that was like anything over the top. I just don't think one in the thing he said anything that necessarily made a lot of sense, and then also didn't really say anything to us that we could have piggybacked off of and like tried to work with.
Yeah, I think in terms of any player who has aspirations to be pro, any player who is a new pro, or you're trying to do anything competitive at all, really, it's always important to be able to talk about issues on your team or issues you're having within the team or whatever, um, in a respectful manner,
Yeah.
so that you're not being, if you're just like holding it all in, you're going to grow increasingly frustrated. And then maybe you just leave the team or something, or you blow up and they kick you from the team. Like,
Yeah.
you can have these discussions, assuming the people on your team are also mature people.
And that's an important thing, and that's the thing that they actually have access to. Is like I would say that I'm very mature. I would say Fox is mature. I'd say Vert is mature. It's just we never like here, like I said, here in your cast, I never heard any of these, complaints or any of these areas that he thought we had issues on. They were never addressed. And had that actually been discussed, I don't know what would have changed. I don't know what would have been different, but like things would have definitely somewhat changed to some capacity, in order to accommodate or make someone feel better. And like I said, we aren't this team where it's just, you're on our team. This is our rules. If you're on our team, you're part of the team. So, like I said, you just have just as much say as anyone else, regardless of being a veteran or a new player.
So at the end of the day, with everything kind of out there on the table, do you think that those were really the reasons Kyno and Yogg left, or do you think they just wanted to play with friends and potentially get paid a little bit more money? Do you think
I think there was multiple factors. I think, being under XSET is a pretty popular org now compared to OXG. I have no problem with OXG. I think OXG is a great org, and I'm not just saying that because they're my org. I've been on tier one orgs, I've been on tier two orgs. Like they don't really mean anything if the org actually cares about you. Like that's the most important thing. And if they're meeting your expectations in terms of salary and this, that, like
a
there's that
lot of,
much
yeah,
people
I
playing
was
it out.
gonna, a lot of time the smaller orgs, assuming
Work
they're
more
big
with
enough,
you.
big enough to pay you,
Yeah.
they'll pay more attention to you because your team is more important to them than like, and this is no shade, I'm not like indirectly shading them. If you're a team on Cloud9, you're kind of just a cog in the wheel, right? Like they have so many teams,
Yeah.
especially like
And
basically
yeah,
if you're not League of Legends, like
right.
your input to the org is so minuscule compared to like League or a bigger thing that,
100%.
that they're not going to pay that much attention to you. Whereas if, you are one of the main teams, you're more important, you get more attention, they'll help you out more.
Agreed. And so, like I said, so I think obviously a different org, and with how X said they have a lot more exposure that they can do and work with. I think that was an incentive. I think them getting pretty sure more salary than what they were originally getting on OXG was more of an incentive. And then I think the biggest thing of them all was definitely teaming with their friends. I think they all played together at one point, or Yogg played with them. They're all really good friends. So I think it was just a situation of, this was an opportunity that they could play with their friends, that the environment would be different. They'd all be with each other, as Kino said, having that friendship and everyone around. So I think that those three things played the biggest factor. I don't even think, the performance side of things, like coming from Oxygen, really played much of a factor in that decision. I think ultimately it was those three, with the last one being the main, which, like I said, I can't fault anyone for wanting to do something different in their career. I'm not sitting over here now that they're gone and be like, I hope Kyno and Yoggah just shit the bed and they have a terrible season and that they regret leaving us. Like, I'm not, I'm not gonna fucking do that. That's just weird and fucking petty. It's your career. You got to look out for yourself at the end of the day. I mean, I hope they made the right decision at the end of the day. I mean, I can't complain because we got two really good players that I'm happy with. So for me, it's, it was a win situation no matter what. It's just now for them. Like I said, I don't hold any ill will towards them. I wish them the best of luck. But again, I think the biggest decision of that choice was just to play with their friends, which, that is what it is.
Yeah, personally, if I ever felt like I got slighted or wronged by people, I would pray on their downfall. But I'm King Petty, as we know. God forgives, Supr doesn't. So kind of going, even past this roster, when you guys had Slash and Bio, and that was a couple years ago now.
Yeah.
What do you think was that was, again, a team that was consistently placing pretty high, but not having great results outside of that, I would say. What would you say was the issue with that team? Because personally, I always felt like the roles were weird. That Slash is not a player. I think on OXG, Slash was playing Heartbreach a lot of the time. And from teaming with Slash on Rogue, he's just like naturally a pretty aggressive player. So that kind of like limits his playmaking. And Bio was on like everything. What, like, I guess, would you say that was just not the right combination of players? Was it a particular player? Like, what do you think was the issue with that version of the roster?
I just don't think the chemistry was there and the personalities, they didn't match. Bio obviously took control of the roster in terms of IGL. So like wherever you saw people on roles, like that was Bio's, doing. And as the IGL, we gave him that leisure, that control of, operating, coordinating the rounds and how they win, who plays what. So me personally, I think it was just a combination of just not the right two players that fit well with the rest of the core roster. And as you saw, I mean, it just, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to sit here and talk shit about anyone, previous teammates, whatever. It just, at the end of the day, it just didn't work out. They just weren't two fits that were going to make our team any better.
This was something I heard, and you don't have to answer it, obviously, if you don't want to, but was kind of the downfall of that part of the roster, because Bio, I believe, was trying to have Fox kicked from the team. Is that a true thing?
There was definitely a clash of heads between those two specifically. Like they definitely butted heads the most out of anyone. And then it was always like, conflicts of, who's on whose side or whatever. But it just, like I said, and that alone, I mean, some of that is true for sure. But that just goes into what I was saying. Like the personalities just didn't pair up well. They just, it just wasn't going to be an end goal of success long, down the road. So clearly the changes made, and with those changes made going into Yoggah and Kyno, it worked out. We went further.
I think I can probably speak for every single Siege player, whereas the choice was Bio or Fox. I think everybody's taking Fox in that situation.
I have no comment on that. Obviously, I love Fox. Fox is my boy, and I have nothing against Bio. I think Bio's a cool dude. Just as a team, it didn't work out. I know you want something. I see it in your face.
I don't want anything. I mean, I was just asking a question on a rumor I heard, and I feel like if that was presented to me, I could team with Bio. I could team with Fox. I team with Fox.
Or the rumors, whether from pro player.
You might be. I don't want to interrupt you, but you might be getting a little too excited because now you're lagging again.
Not the lag. Hold on. It's gonna
okay. Yeah, I think it's okay now. Maybe.
I see a green bar.
Okay.
Sorry, I got a little too excited. You got me a little excited there.
So I guess heading into this year's NAL, how do you feel about the other team's changes? Because I think honestly, this may be the most changes team by team that we've ever seen. I feel like almost every single team went through some sort of change. Probably outside of SSG, our team, obviously Lauren is stepping in for Joe as coach, but Joe is still essentially the analyst for the Sonics. And Dark Zero, surprisingly, they didn't make a roster change. It's like shocking. How do you feel about NA this stage or this season? Do you feel, what rosters do you think are potentially going to be strong? What rosters do you think are potentially going to be a little bit of a shit show for a while? Do you think the top four is kind of going to stay in that area? How do you feel about the 10 teams we have now?
I think it's going to stay pretty consistent to what it was the previous season. I still think we're definitely going to be at the top with Newers and Mitch. So to me, I think we're staying consistent. I think you guys are staying consistent. I think TSM, Space Station, DZ, like we're all going to be consistent. I do think, regardless of that consistency there, I do think that this season will probably be the most interesting in terms of professional play that we've seen, that you've seen, that I will see. I think it's a little more competitive than it has been, but I think still the end result will stay the same. I think Xset and I think Parabellum, I think will reach above the lower teams from like the top 5 in my opinion. And then I think it'll just kind of be a battle between, and this is no shade to anyone either, so like I don't need anyone like coming to my fucking DMs or saying stupid shit to me. This is an opinion.
I'm just gonna say this: be careful what you say about Mirage, because if you make it personal with Tommy, everything.
I just think the other 5, they're just going to be still playing for their areas and like avoiding. Is there relegation still, or are they getting rid of relegation now?
I believe there is still relegation.
Okay, so I think it's just going to be a battle of not getting relegated. In my opinion, I think it's still just going to be the same area. I do think it's going to be more competitive, but I still think the top teams are going to be the top teams. I know that wasn't the most insight that I could give. It's just that's kind of what it's been. I don't really see it changing too much.
If you did see a team kind of breaking through, sort of like how the Sonics did last year, who would who would you say was the most likely of those teams to kind of break through?
Like just like you guys did, you said?
Yeah, like if you were gonna, not saying that they're going to, but if you had to pick a team, who would you go with?
I would like to say Parabellum, truthfully. I know they've had a change with Spirits, but I still think with Penguins, IGLN, and the guys around them, and Melted also leaving too, I still think Parabellum has a really good chance. I think they all have very dedicated players that, have good drive and have good talent, that they can persevere and become a top team. Do I know how long that will take? Well, if let's say it does hypothetically, will that be as long as it took you guys? Will it be shorter? I don't know, but I think that team, in my opinion, has some of the most potential to get up there eventually. Do I know when? I have no fucking clue.
So as you were talking, they finally released the schedule for NAL, and your guys' first game is against TSM, and then the next day you play Astralis. Obviously, starting out with TSM, who are the invitational champions. I've seen some people say that they're maybe like they could still be like 4th, 5th at NA because they're not as good in best of ones. I don't necessarily agree. If you're the world champions, you're the world champions. Do you feel like starting out with that game rather than later in the season, especially with like a new roster, and I think this will be Newer's first game ever above the T3 level, and his first game on LAN? Do you feel like going against TSM is probably like you would have rather played them later in the season, or are you good like just let's get that one out of the way and see what happens?
I personally prefer playing the top teams first, with a new roster or keeping the same roster. I like to get the harder games out of the way, because if you win those games, it kind of like winning those important matches. Not that any match isn't any less important than the other, but like, beating a team like TSM, beating teams like you, beating teams like SSG, Dark Zero, winning those games. Oh, I'm lagging. Am I good?
I think you're okay now.
Okay.
We can hear you though.
Okay. Winning games like that is obviously important for kind of what the future is going to look like down the road. So like you can kind of not necessarily predict that you're going to be in the top 4 or whatever, but it definitely gives you a better idea of what the rest of the games are going to kind of look like. Not that those games can't sway in different directions, but it kind of gives you more momentum and more drive to be like, okay, let's just close out the rest of these matches. We guarantee top 4, we guarantee the major, we guarantee invite, whatever the case is. So that's kind of, I prefer to play the top teams off the rip.
Yeah, at the end of the day, in a 10-team league, you play every team. You just play them in different orders, and in reality, no single game matters more than the other because any combination of points gets you to where you want to go, right? It doesn't matter the order in which you win them, just matters that you get enough wins.
Yeah.
So, we're about at an hour 10 now, and I think we pretty much covered all of the bases. Was there anything in particular that we hadn't talked about that you wanted to? Was there anything you wanted to say that we haven't really spoken about yet?
No, I think me and you actually covered everything that I wanted to discuss or that you even had questions for. I think everything was pretty much uh, talked about, and everyone has a better understanding from both sides of the OXG XSET situation, certain roles in the game and how they play, certain different areas of, you know.
Okay, here's a well, I'll ask one more question and then we'll call it.
Okay.
And this is kind of a hot take question. Will the current roster, the 5 that XSET have right now, will that team ever qualify for a major?
Truthfully, I don't know. Like I said, I hope for the best for Kyno and Yoggah that is a decision that, comes with success. I don't know how fast that succession, like hearing what Kyno said, like he didn't even sound confident in, like maybe it could take a year or two. So I think that already kind of, the confidence doesn't seem to be there. Like you should be confident joining a new team, right? So I can only hope that they do, but I don't think they will right off the bat. And if they do, then they prove me wrong. They can message me and be like, "Oh, I saw what you said in Seth's fucking podcast. So we're here, shitter." Like whatever. But I don't think they're gonna make it off the bat. I think they can down the future, but I don't think they'll make it right away.
Yeah, I'm not saying they can't either because I do think they have a talented roster, but so to qualify for a major, you'd have to break into the top 4. And NA right now, I would say they're like a really strong 5. And then I think Astralis.
That's where I put them.
Yeah, and then I think Astralis is kind of on that border there of 5th, 6th, and then XSET's probably there as well. And then obviously Parabellum, Beast Coast are literally completely new rosters. Even Mirage. So those 3 to me are like more unknown.
Yeah. No, for sure. I agree with that completely.
So I definitely think they have the talent to do it. I think it'll be very difficult because they're going to have to pass. If you want to say there's a top 5 of SSG, TSM, OXG, Sonics, and Dark Zero, and then you have Astralis there, they're going to have to outplace 2 of those teams to get top 4, which is not impossible, certainly.
No.
But I am curious to see if that roster does not do that over the course of the year. Say they're like 5th, 6th all the time. Are they going to keep the same roster? Or is that where the changes are coming out? Because that's where the Friends team thing kind of comes into it.
You heard what Kyno said is that XSET is making sure that roster is going to stay the same roster for the entire year, no matter what the turnout is. And me personally, like, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. I think it's important for players to not get comfortable and be like, oh, well, I keep my job no matter what's happening, no matter where we place. Like, I think it takes pressure off. And I think for me as a competitor, I prefer to have the pressure on me than to have it off of me so I can be a little more lax. I don't necessarily have to work as hard. And like that's me. So I'm not speaking for anyone, but I prefer to have the pressure. They're like, oh, am I performing in scrims? Am I dog shit in pro league matches? Am I going to lose my job because of this? Not, oh, well, shit, I keep my job no matter what. I'm getting this pay guaranteed, so it doesn't really matter. So for me, I prefer to have the pressure.
I think that roster, similar to other rosters, is in a very interesting situation because I think XSET most likely spent a lot of money not only buying out Kyno and Yoggah, buying back their license into the league.
I know that house was expensive.
Yeah, they have the house. They brought in all new players. They are certainly making an investment into the team of a team that is like a top team. So if they're not a top team, I do wonder how Xset the org sees that, or if they just really don't care. They just have money to blow like that, in which case, more power to them. But a lot of these teams that are getting a lot of money, like the SSGs, the Dark Zeros,
Yeah.
there is a
I don't
ton of pressure, I think, on those teams where, like, if you are not winning events, if you are not placing very high, then you're being disappointing. Like,
yeah.
even for them, like, I think probably even for like SSG, just qualifying to a major and then like losing or getting top 8 or something, like getting first round in playoffs,
Mhm.
that's like the org is not happy at all with that. And
Yeah,
that's like
no,
a weird
100%.
that's a weird pressure, I feel like, to be under, where you're expected to always be contending to win, which is like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's you do want to always win, but
I mean, that should be your mindset being in a professional scene, no matter what profession. I'd assume and I'd hope that for me, any of my teammates that, we all want to win, we all want to be at the top, then, happily placing seventh and, avoiding relegation.
yeah, I think in that aspect it's a little different because I don't think in reality most of the time you're under you're in a position where you're going to place that low.
Yeah.
It's like for some teams, even going to majors and not going that far is not good enough. I mean, we saw that with
Yeah.
Dark Zero where they were constantly making roster changes.
Hmm.
Like there's so much pressure from some of the teams based off of, how important your team is to the org, how much money the
Well,
players on team
look at
get.
G2. G2 is a prime example of that. Is
Hmm.
G2 has not been the same G2 that everyone knew since Pangu and all of them have left. Like they still try to keep that same title, that same name, but like that name, in my opinion, G2 holds no weight. And that's no offense to like any of the players. It's just G2 was known as G2 because that was the roster with Pangu, Fabian, all of them, and that was winning events.
What do you feel about the opinion that the G2 roster that won the Invitational in 2019, 2018
Mm.
would get absolutely shit on by all 20 teams of the 2022 Invitational?
Do I? Sorry, can you say that again?
So, in a way, this is kind of like the Farmers League thing that people say in
Yeah,
sports, right? Like, people say Michael Jordan played against like farmers or something. LeBron's better because he's playing
yeah.
against way much better athletes, a developed game. Do you
Mm.
think that the Penta G2 roster that won all the championships early in the game would absolutely just get smoke showed by all the teams that played at this year's Invitational, or the majority of those teams?
I don't want to say they would get smoke showed. I think they would still be a good contending team. Do I think that they would have the dominance that they had back then? No. The one thing that I'll always give credit to G2 and Penguins, all those guys, I think those five had a very, very good understanding of the game and how to play it and how to play around it that a lot of teams, regardless of how good they were, weren't that solidified or had a really good understanding of how the game's played. Whether that's metas, whether that's, operators, like whatever the case is, like I do feel that they like because I can't say that those players aren't good. Like they're definitely good, but back then they 100% had a way better understanding of how the game was played fundamentally than where it is at now. Like I think now where Siege is at, it's probably been the most competitive, in my opinion, at events, at lands,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case is, than what it was back then. Like G2 was fucking 7-0ing people, 6-0ing people, like whatever it was, where you don't really see that anymore, no matter how good a roster is. So I don't think that they would go into this league now just absolutely dog shit everyone. Like I think they would still be a good team, but I don't think it would be the dominance that they had back then.
I kind of think they would get absolutely blasted, but that's my opinion. If Pengu were to come back and play, which has been rumored, I mean, technically he is signed to Dark Zero. Do you think that would he still be a good player? Would he be the Pengu of old, literally the best player, or would he be more NVK level where it's just like pretty much washed?
I don't think Pangu would be bad by any means. I think Pangu, just even watching his streams and watching some of his clips, like Pangu still stays pretty consistent with the game
Mm-hmm.
mechanically, still reads situations very well. So I think Pangu would still be a really good player if he came back, because he still plays the game 24/7. It's not like he's, didn't touch the game since he's retired. He still plays it every single day. So I think he would still be a good player. I think it's going to take him maybe a little bit to just like adapt back into the pro environment, because we all know playing the game casually versus professionally definitely is a very different world. But I don't think he would be just absolute fucking horseshit. Like I couldn't say that. Like Pengu never struck me as a horse shit player, even in him retiring. So I think if he came back, he would still be a good player. I don't know, obviously, like, and obviously some players are more dominant on, their previous rosters or rosters in the past, whatever. So I think again, it would take him some time to, get uh in the rhythm of things again. But aside from that, I still think Pengu would be a good player.
Okay,
But I don't think he would be the
you're
best player in the world.
you're the GM of Dark Zero. You're Brandon Carr. Pengu calls you. He said, "Listen, it's time. I'm ready to come back." Who from Dark Zero are you benching, and why is it Troy?
I got an even better question.
Okay.
I got a better question. You're the GM, Brandon Carr, and Pengu calls you and asks, "Who am I replacing?" Without even me saying anyone's name, who are you replacing?
I'm telling Troy to get the fuck out of there. I say, Pamba, congratulations. You don't have to play Hard Breach anymore. Eclipse, congratulations. You can go back to Sledge and Buck. Pengu, welcome to Hard Breach.
Well, there you go.
Pretty straightforward.
I can't do that. That's the one thing I love about you, Seth, and I've known you since the Xbox scene, is like, I mean, you saw how I was back then. Like, I had no problem talking shit and getting in people's face and doing all that. But it's just like, for me over the years, like, I just can't do that shit anymore. I just don't fucking care enough to just like roast people and do that shit anymore. And like, I love that you still do it. Like, I love that you create this like villain, or not even necessarily a villain. Like, you're just honest. And some people take honesty as like, oh, you're a piece of shit. This, that. Like, it's just how you feel. Like, if you're going to get mad at someone for having an opinion, eat a dick. But aside from that, it's shit talk. It's banter. I think it's important to have. I wish I could do it. I personally wish I could do it. I just can't do that shit anymore.
Yeah, obviously, a good amount of what I do is just trolling or for kind of attention purposes. But one thing I will say is, usually if I say something, I at least believe it to be true. That doesn't always mean it's right. It's it's my opinion. But if you ask me for my opinion, I'm never not going to tell you what I think is true, which is, I mean, probably why people.
I mean, the thing is, have I agreed with everything that you have said? No.
Well, then you were wrong.
Respect that. Well, exactly, and that's an opinion. It's okay to be wrong in your opinion, right? So it's like, but at the end of the day, like, I do respect that as you as a person. Like, you don't fucking care what other people think about you. Like, and you shouldn't, especially in this industry, in this world. Like, if you're really that worried about other people's opinions about you, you're gonna have a hard time, especially in this specific world. Like,
hey, if you go to bed at night and you sit there and you don't think about how you've wronged somebody, or you don't think about something that keeps you up because you did something bad, if you just stay truthful, if you're okay with everything you say and everything you do, then it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks, right? As long as you're happy with you and the things you say and how you treat other people, doesn't necessarily mean it's right all the time, but as long as you're okay with you, what somebody else thinks, yeah,
that's right.
But even if it wasn't, even if
for sure,
in theory, if I treated people like absolute garbage,
which you do,
okay, and then I went to bed not thinking that I treat people fine, if you were sitting there telling me that I treat people like absolute garbage, it wouldn't bother me if I thought I treated them fine, right? So it's kind of the ideology of, you literally just do not care about what other people think. It doesn't always mean you're going to be right, and there will be instances where you're wrong. Now, obviously, I hope I'm not like fucking just absolutely the biggest piece of shit to other people. But even if I was, would I care?
Yeah. I mean, that's the one thing too, is you don't cross a line that like some people do when they go to talk shit. Like, they get like super fucking and like, that's the one thing I don't like about when some people.
You should never make fun of people's like yeah, I don't like.
Yeah, like that's the one things I don't like, is like, for me, like, if someone's gonna talk shit to me, like, I'm gonna defend myself, whatever the case is. But what I don't like about when some people, whether they don't like someone or whether they're talking shit about someone, like they will completely dismiss whether someone has a lot of achievements, whether someone, family, this, that, like they got to like really get personal, like, and they start moving away from talking shit. And that's the one thing you don't, when you talk shit or you just not even talk shit, you just state your opinions about however you feel about something. You aren't going for like personal shots at people. You saying someone's gameplay is dog shit is not something personal. That is something that correlates to the game and what we play or the professional play. Like you aren't indirectly just like going at someone's throat outside of, a legit topic. And a lot of people don't know how to differentiate that.
Yeah, I think that definitely I'll never have a problem with somebody talking shit on gameplay or talking shit on your team. That's within the game. But you should never be getting personal with somebody, like, whether you're talking about their family, whether you're, calling them ugly or calling them fat. Like, okay, I might be fat, but personally, I've won $60,000 since December. So I'm, I have a lot of money to get fat. So I just think there are definitely lines to it. You should never get personal, and that's for everyone, especially if you're an up-and-comer, by the way.
Oh,
I don't know why you would ever.
Worst.
But I mean, I'll be scrimming Challenger League people, and they'll type like in chat to us, and it's like, bro, you are literally. Not only are we like in NA at least the champions of the league, but you're like trying to get in Pro League if you play Challenger League. Why the fuck would you talk shit, especially to me? Because my opinion to some people is pretty important. So if I think you're fucking dog shit, a lot of people will think you're fucking dog shit. And if you're sitting there talking like, what are you doing? Like, motherfucker, enjoy getting fucking $0 a month for 3 more years. Like, why are you typing?
I can't agree with that anymore. I've seen some T3 players, not so much tier 2, but tier 3 players just like talking to someone like the top like players that have been in the scene, like just even as myself, like talking shit to me. And it's like, you do fucking realize like, I'm here for a reason and you aren't doing shit in your career. Like you aren't doing yourself a service by shit talking any pro player. It doesn't matter their status, but especially when you're going for people that like have a lot more say and have a lot more following behind them. Like you literally are shooting yourself in the foot in every fucking direction you go. And to me, it makes no sense. And a lot of these kids fucking do it. And it's appalling because then you see them in your DMs if roster changes happen and like, hey, I just turned 18 or I'm 19, I'm free, I'm young, I'm talented, I'm what you need. Like, shut the fuck up. No one cares. You dug your own hole.
Yeah, and I think with that, we could pretty much call it. Lax made a really good point along the podcast of how he thought Kyno was just the absolute biggest piece of shit, and I'm glad
say that. I love Kyno and I love Yoggah. I can't listen to Supr. I know what he says might be correct to some, but for me, like that isn't true.
But yeah, thank you for joining me, Lax. I hope those of you watching enjoy, and if you did miss some of it, it will of course be uploaded to Spotify and iTunes. And if you are listening to this and not watching, I do apologize for some of the internet difficulties, but such as Lax would say it, the cock skidding to him.
Sucks.
Yep, cock sucks.
Cock sucks cocks.
That's their slogan. Put that on a billboard.
It's literally COX sucks COX. Like they're clever with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I do appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much, by the way. And everyone say hi to Kylo and goodbye to Kylo.
Okay, so if you don't know what he's talking about because you're listening, Kylo is the Star Wars villain who, well, I won't spoil the movie, but he's emo Star Wars.
He even has the lightsaber of Kylo Ren right here on his chest with the fur. I don't know if you can see it, but it's there.
All right. See you guys later. Thanks for hanging out. I'll be back next week with
All right.
I'm not sure who I'm getting next week. I might try to get a EU player, but we'll see. See you guys later. Yeah, maybe. See you guys later.